I can't help thinking somewhere in the universe there has to be something better than man. Has to be.
Taylor is portrayed in the first film as being completely misanthropic.
Yeah.
He hates humanity. He's happy that he's never going home.
Your loved ones are dead and forgotten for 20 centuries. 20 centuries!
Oh, Taylor, quit writing him.
And then we get to Escape from Planet Apes.
Yesterday, a U.S. spacecraft splashed down off the Southern California coast.
When it's revealed that the president says, well, we've learned that this is the one captained by Colonel Taylor, all the generals in the room go, ugh.
To be exact, the one commanded by Colonel Taylor.
Taylor.
I'd seen the original film several times growing up. I don't remember where or when.
Yeah.
But I had never seen any of the sequels, and I knew very little about them.
Well, it came before we were born, so more than likely we saw it on TV, both of us.
Yeah.
I think that's probably where I saw it.
This is 7 months of nothing but banana daiquiris.
As kids, we probably watched them crazy out of order, and we were probably completely confused by, wait, who? What?
What?
First of all, I think you're right. I probably saw them on TV.
All 5 Planet of the Apes films, all day and all night.
Mostly like in bits. Like I caught it in progress probably most of the time. But I do have a vague memory of my father explaining the end of the film to me. Look at this at the end. This is, in the far future, and he's just now discovering that the planet he's been on this whole time
Oh my God.
is actually Earth.
I'm back.
You finally did it! You crazy bastards! You did it!
Damn you all to hell!
Did it blow your mind? Your little tiny child mind?
When I was a kid, I thought the premise was just like, oh my God, it cut into me.
Jesus.
The sad thing is that it's so part of pop culture over the decades that it's become a punchline.
Oh my God, I was wrong.
And it became too familiar and too much of a joke.
You maniacs! Damn yous! Darn you all to heck!
Just play along. The apes are a great audience.
And then when I went back and rewatched them, they are varying degrees of good, but...
It's a good way to describe it.
Oh, yeah. Parts of them I was very impressed with. But that first movie still holds up.
Oh, yeah.
And the effects are really good for their time. And the makeup is really good for the time. And they take it deadly serious.
It squashes a man's ego.
There is comedy in it, but not a lot.
Objection! Sustained!
And it is, as my brother likes to say, the best 2-hour episode of The Twilight Zone ever. Because that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, thanks to Mr. Serling.
Rod Serling took the original French novel, and then he and another screenwriter turned it into something that was palatable for, because the novel is kind of different. There's also, by the way, do you know who Dana Gould is, the comedian?
I believe so, yeah.
He's very, very funny comedian. He's one of the world's biggest Planet of the Apes nuts. Like, absolutely a fanatic of the original series. They asked him if he would be interested in adapting the original screenplay, which was more close to the novel. And it's really worth checking out. In the original novel, it's literally like our modern society, but the apes. And I mean, it's very much just the world flipped on its head. And the movie that we got, actually, I think is perhaps a little smarter because it's like, well, unless he's thousands and thousands of years in the future, maybe ape culture is still kind of this barbaric thing. Color-coded, by the way. Don't forget, Chad, you see someone in green?
Stop the war! Freedom!
They're a chimp. See someone in orange?
I have always known about man.
They're an orangutan. And if they're in black and red...
Naked, merciless force!
Oh, those are gorillas. Just watch out.
Look out!
Yeah.
Watch out!
That was the only problem I really had with the entire series, is they're trying to kind of like have it both ways. The apes are evolved, like apes don't kill apes, not like you idiot humans who blew up the world, but they are completely this non-utopian, very divided society where it's like you don't have a pacifist gorilla.
The gorillas are a bunch of militaristic nincompoops.
You don't have a warlike chimp.
The chimpanzees are pacifists.
And the orangutans a bunch of blinkered pseudoscientific geese.
And I'm like, okay. And they all wear their colors. And you're like, Well, maybe
Yeah.
the chimpanzee would like to wear orange. Probably look great in orange. What the hell's going on?
Where did they get those clothes?
They brought them with them, sir.
What?
Why are all apes created equal?
Some apes, it seems, are more equal than others.
Ridiculous.
But the thing I do like about that first one is it is actually a solid sci-fi concept.
Behold this marvel, this missing link in an evolutionary chain. Silence her!
It doesn't need a sequel at all.
No.
Any sequels. And you watch it as a piece, and Rod Serling's great moralizing, and I mean, he was never subtle. It's not about the subtlety. He just makes these statements.
Logic is an enemy and truth is a menace.
But he makes them well, and he makes them poetic. And especially, can you imagine being like, did you see that episode of Mad Men where he goes and watches Planet of the Apes in the theater?
Oh, I know I did. I just don't remember it.
It's just great because he's kind of like, I think he's trying to get away from unpleasantness in the home. And he's kind of like, huh? Like he kind of likes it. And I just try to imagine like audiences of the day who weren't familiar with the novel, which was successful-ish, but only nerds knew it. But yeah, being just like a popcorn guzzling theater goer sees it for the first time and you get to the twist and you're like, oh, fuck, that's awesome.
The humans blew up New York?
All of America.
So he came back to here.
In the future.
Jesus.
Absolutely. But the thing you pointed out is like the biggest Twilight Zone episode ever. That twist, I don't know if it was Rod's idea, because that's the biggest change from the novel.
Yeah,
is that
it's true.
In the novel, it is a different planet. And then he comes back to Earth, I guess, and that's the same thing has happened there. Right?
Yes. He's seeing a parallel of where the society is headed.
But that twist, which makes so much sense, it's surprising when I've heard that the novel didn't have that. It doesn't have Planet of the Apes being Earth. You're like,
wait, hold on.
That wasn't the original novelist's idea. That was, I guess, Rod's idea. I'm not sure, but that makes the movie. I mean, that leading up to that realization.
That makes the movie.
And it makes the whole thing make more sense, you know?
Yes, and there's a great smugness to the ape culture, the way they're looking down on the stupid humans who can't even speak anymore, you know, and that kind of thing. And except for Zeus, who knows the planet's past and he's covering all that hypocrisy and smugness. That's exactly like human society. So that whole thing of like, it's not even conceivable to anyone besides Zeus and like Cornelius that there could have been highly advanced people before them. So yeah, that last gut punch where you're like, oh my God, we did it to ourselves. And the cycle will continue and the apes will eventually do it to themselves. It's just, there's a self-destructive nature to especially scientific and moralistic superiority. It's like, yeah, well, you're just damning yourselves over and over and over again. So that punch is still great. It's still great, even though it is parodied out the wazoo.
It's so well done, and the way it's revealed. When you're watching it now and knowing what's coming, it's like, come on, get to it. Because he's writing up to it. Surely he must have realized what he's looking at now. But that's that's the artistry of the reveal.
Yeah, that's a pretty big thing. That movie is prestigious. What's weird to me about the sequels is that they all made money. But it seems like Fox just didn't give a shit. So they're like, they'll go see it regardless. So the budgets, you can tell, just keep dropping. And the level of quality control just keeps dropping. Whereas you'd think they'd see that as a moneymaker and they'd want to invest and make each one bigger. But instead they're like, here's another year, another ape movie, whatever. But in this one, it's a prestige picture. So that shot where I think it's above the torch, which is all warped and destroyed, and you can see the horses going slower. Because I think even before he gets off and does the "you did it," he already knows it's hitting him.
It's sinking into him, yeah.
And then it just overwhelms him, and and Nova's just sitting there going, "Taylor want a boom boom?" Because literally, she's just. But again, God bless her, and very attractive actress who says 2 words in the entire series. But yeah, no, it is still powerful. And then here's what I will say about the sequels. Here's my take. I respect them simply because they don't rehash. Each one, even the bad later ones, are building story arcs, and they each have a different twist that they're doing on the formula. And I was like, oh, the budget's not there, but still, it's, the second one has a pseudo tailor, and you're like, okay, well, here we go again. They immediately shot somebody off in another rocket to find them. It's like, this is dumb, especially since they already know about time dilation and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, you'll catch up to them and they'll already be 100 fucking years old or something. What is the point? Anyway, other than that, it has the balls to destroy the Earth at the end. And you're like, wow.
It's so...
Wow!
It is batshit. And it's so funny to me that the movie is almost like a hate letter to the whole idea of sequels. The movie just hates the idea of sequels. And, fuck this sequel in particular. And by the way, there will be no more sequels because we're blowing up the planet. Everybody dies. Kill this guy some more. And go home, people. It's over.
What's weird about the sequel is the enemy again turns out to be man.
Man is evil, capable of nothing but destruction.
And I'm like, oh, yeah. That's the only disappointment. But still, like you said, yeah, absolute batshit.
I know it sounds insane.
I had forgotten that Roddy McDowall isn't in it. That it's another actor playing Cornelius.
Yeah.
And you're like, what?
Yeah.
And this time, Cornelius is not played by Roddy McDowall, but by David Watson.
I had forgotten it. I was like, there's something weird about him. Like, I watched the first few minutes. I'm like, what's going on? Is he having an off day? And then looked up like, holy shit, it's just someone doing a Roddy impression.
If they catch you speaking, they will dissect you and they will kill you in that order.
And actually, he was confused. He was doing a Rowdy Roddy Piper impression. So an impression of the 1980s wrestler.
You want a banana? Have a banana.
Oops.
So I like it for the fact that it goes farther than anything. The Forbidden Zone, and there are humans but out there that speak, but they're mutants because of radiation, and they're telepathic, and they've got horribly scarred faces, but they wear nice masks and then take them off, and they go, I will only show my true face to my creator. And you're like, okay. And then they're worshiping the last nuclear bomb, and it's like the doomsday bomb. You're like, what the and then Taylor's like, I'm ending it all. Boom. And then you go, well, that's it. Beneath the Planet of the Apes. That's the end of it. And sure enough, then you get Escape From, and you're like, what is happening? Each one just keeps spinning it and spinning it.
The third time's the charm, as the saying goes.
And that was a really, I think, a brilliant turn, going from Beneath, which somehow, it's the same writer. This is the thing that blew my mind, because Beneath the Planet of the Apes was a slog to get through, and I was thinking, oh God, are all these going to be this bad? And then we get to Escape from the Planet of the Apes, and I was like, wow, this is so much better, and it's like really brilliant recovery. It's the same screenwriter.
Yeah, the same. Oh, I should have looked up his name.
The MVP of Escape from the Planet of the Apes is the screenwriter, Paul Dane.
Even the last one, he doesn't write the last one, but he still gets the story credit because I think, weirdly, he mapped it out. I think he actually said, look, guys, if you keep going, here's where I would take it. And it'll kind of wrap it all around. And I think it does. And I'm like, weirdly impressed.
I guess you might say they just joined the human race.
Escape, which, by the way, starts off so lighthearted, it's almost like a Disney film, like a 1960s era Disney film.
Until the end.
Which is so dark.
I know.
You see a baby getting shot. It's like, what the hell's going on? And the whole idea, too, that those two mothers would have willfully traded their own children. It's like, God, that is, only in an act of war would anything like that ever happen. That mothers would go to that extreme.
But we understand each other.
Well, that's also kind of a Christian thing of like, oh, the chosen one, and we have to disguise it because they're wiping out any baby chimp. They're like, wipe them all out in case it's the smart one.
Herod tried that, and Christ survived.
And the fact that Armando is keeping the smart one with just the ape mom, and that Zira's walking around with just a chimpanzee baby, and you're like, oh, it's so grim at the end. You're like, oh man,
it's so grim.
Now what?
But yes, Escape does flip the formula pretty brilliantly, even though you have to go, oh, they are retconning. It's just like Back to the Future 2 and 3. They introduced the thing about,
What's the matter? You chicken?
and it's like, oh, he can't back down. I'm like, well, that would have been nice if it had been introduced in the first one. This one, in this series, Cornelius, as an archaeologist, has some idea that perhaps humans had been intelligent at one point and there was an earlier society. Zaius knows that's the case, but that's it. They don't know about space flight.
Flight is a scientific impossibility.
In that first movie, they're like, right, you're from another planet. Okay. Okay. And it turns out he's not. But spoilers. But then in Escape, apparently Professor Milo, who he had not met, played by the tragic Sal Mineo, and actually well, but apparently he had been so much of an trouble on set that they cut his role short. Did you read that? Like his character was supposed to be bigger, and they actually have him killed when they're in the zoo because they're like, we don't want to deal with Sal Mineo anymore. And this was supposed to be like his comeback, and he's good, but apparently they just didn't want to deal with him, so they're like going, we kill Milo in the zoo. He was supposed to make it, I think, all the way through. But anyway, so Milo apparently salvaged Taylor's ship.
But you left before the war had ended. In a spaceship, which Dr. Milo learned to navigate. Correct.
And you got to be like, what? Not only did he salvage it, but had it operable in the 15 minutes between Taylor finding the mutants with the bomb and the explosion of the Earth. Because Milo, Cornelius, and Zira, somehow they do a reverse through time.
We have passed through a backward disturbance in time.
You have to take a lot on sci-fi faith. Like, okay.
Yeah. It's really funny that they don't exactly gloss over it either. You do have to go, well, okay. But that conversation keeps coming up in the first half of the film. And you're like, okay. No, that's cool. That's fine. I'm happy to buy this.
You're like, stop bringing it up.
Everybody acknowledges how unlikely it is and how weird, and the apes themselves don't really understand how they went back in time. And they're like, well, that's what happened.
Yeah, because literally they pushed a button, I think, and they don't know how the ship works either. They're like, wow, okay.
It was Dr. Milo who salvaged it. He studied it and half understood it.
Half?
And did they know the Earth was going to end? Because why would Cornelius and Zira, who's pregnant, why would they be getting into a ship that's going somewhere?
Yes.
It has to be that they knew. And they're like, we saw the Earth blow up from our window. Like, great. And then we said, I guess we'll die in this can.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense really on the face of it, but it's just such a fun idea. And they execute it as well as they could have under the circumstances, I think.
The conceit that you really are just wanting to get to, you almost don't want the explanations because there's nothing that's really going to, satisfy. You go, oh, okay.
We came from your future.
But the conceit is just brilliant it's the flip. Cornelius and Zira are now in human-run past Earth. It's just a reversal on its head, and you're like, I'm all about that. That's great. What I don't understand is that ship lands, and the news is covering it. It's like a spaceship has landed, and I'm like, don't they know it's Project Icarus? It's designed like the ship that they sent off with Taylor. And when they have the officials, the military dudes are like going, welcome, astronauts, to, what?
Yeah. Well, they saved that reveal or that bit of information for the scene. It's one of the Polo Alpha scenes.
It was one of two that have been missing in space for over 2 years now.
And I love that moment is so great because, of course, Taylor is portrayed in the first film as being completely misanthropic.
Yeah.
He hates humanity.
You thought life on Earth was meaningless. You despise people.
He just wants to get away. He's happy that he's never going home. So when it's revealed that the president says, well, we've learned that this is one of the two ships from this program. This specifically was the one captained by, Colonel Taylor. And all the generals in the room go, ugh.
To be exact, the one commanded by Colonel Taylor.
That asshole.
You mean the guy always talked through clenched teeth?
Have they identified the bodies, Mr. President?
Yeah.
That guy? Actually, that is... I mean, I don't know if that's a wink at the actor, but I will say they make it part of his character. I was surprised when I rewatched Planet of the Apes how much of an asshole Taylor is to everybody.
Still can't accept it. Time's wiped out everything you ever knew. It's all dust.
And then he softens a little bit when the tables are turned and he's not in control, and then he becomes sympathetic-ish. But yeah, I love like the first 20 minutes where he's like going, yeah, we're all dead. All the people that you know are dead. And the hottie we brought with us, guess what? She's not hot anymore. She's dead.
You don't seem very cut up about it.
It's a little late for a wake. She's been dead nearly a year.
You were hoping to hook up with her, weren't you? Well, you could try, but she's dead.
And with our lovely Lieutenant Stewart dead, it looks like you're the last of the line.
He's such a dick with his little cigar.
Your loved ones are dead and forgotten for 20 centuries. 20 centuries!
Plus, didn't you find it funny in the first movie that the two guys that survive with him for a little bit, how they're like constantly hit by, oh my God, everyone I know, all my family, they're all dead. And I'm like, did they not explain how this program was going to work? I mean, they have a ticker in the ship letting you know what the relative time years are on Earth. Did you think you were going to get back and your girlfriend was still going to be like going, how was the trip, honey? No, her great grandkid's going to be like, man, you did my grandma. Weird.
Even if you could get back, they'd think you were something that fell out of a tree.
Oh, Taylor, quit writing him.
But anyway, so, I mean, they're constantly hit by it. I'm like, I think that they signed up for the wrong thing.
Why did you sign on for this trip? You volunteered. Why?
I thought we were going to the moon. I really thought we were going to be back in just like a couple of weeks.
Yeah, there's a few loose threads in the sci-fi aspect of the original story.
It is a thing where you shouldn't think about it too much.
You're right. There's a couple of things that are amusing to me, and it's just the part of this is just the way that sci-fi was at the time. It's what you've referred to as the time tunnel problem, where you go everywhere you go in history and wherever you are.
Everyone's speaking English.
Everybody speaks English.
I greet you, Marco Polo.
So the way it's set up, the way the story is actually told, there's an explanation for it, but it never occurs to Taylor until he finally puts the pieces together at the end that, hey, you're on a planet where everybody's speaking and writing and reading English.
I have come to you from a planet in a different solar system.
Stop right there. Let me see that paper.
Maybe your theory about coming from another planet might have a little hole in it somewhere there, Taylor.
Dude, the second he's writing, it's like, I can speak, or I was hurt, or whatever he writes in his first note. I mean, the fact that he's listening to them speak English, it should have been within the first couple of minutes.
Smile.
He'd go, whoa, parallel Earth? Even if he didn't know it was his Earth, he could just be like, how does this play out? I don't understand. And then they're writing English.
Humans can't write.
That's just dumb.
And this was, but there's a really nice touch there. It's one of the interview scenes in Escape when they ask, and I love, there's so many great scenes in this movie. It's such wonderfully written science fiction. Yeah. And they're just conversations. I love that shit. So, but they ask them, how can you speak English?
What is English? I speak the language taught to me by my father and mother, who were taught by their fathers and mothers before them. It has been the language of our ancestors for nearly 2,000 years.
And it's like, of course, that's so great.
Yeah.
I love that they address that. And there's a lot of moments like that throughout the film. And the conversations of morality between the German scientist and the president. Yeah. That's just between the two of them.
Given the power to alter the future, have we the right to use it?
I don't know.
Another great scene.
It is. And actually the underlying, it gives you, Escape is pretty great. And I really like Conquest and then Battle. Conquest and Escape, which are both in our past in the human world, work really well because they give you surface level entertainment. Roddy McDowell,
hello,
MVP, but also Kim, what's her name, who plays Zero?
Good morning. I'm Kim Hunter.
They're both great. And their chemistry's great.
Yeah.
So there's fun to be had with Cornelius and Zero both going like, holy crap. So this is the past. This is nuts. Oh. And then they're, the cheesy, but I still like it, like fashion montage where it's like, oh, look at you in your suit. You look very nice, Cornelius. And she comes out in her 1973 fashions, and Cornelius is like, woo, hot damn. Anyway, all that's delightful. But there's the underpinning of the serious, like you say, sci-fi conceit of the scientist does come off a little evil guy-ish.
Now, I want them taken, yes, but taken alive.
Is that clear?
Quite clear, Mr. President.
And plus, he's German, by the way, of course. Played by longtime soap opera actor. Man, I should have the IMDb up. But he was the werewolf in the Coal Shack werewolf episode. Anyway, Eric Braeden. Oh, that just popped in my head. Eric Braeden. Anyway.
You babbling fool.
But he does a good job with, he's not being outright evil. The thing is, he and the president are both going, well, the problem is, we know now that in 2,000 years, we won't be around. But in almost 2,000 years from now, humanity will destroy itself. And the apes will rise. We now know that is our future. What I think is hilarious and very hypocritical is they see Cornelius and Zira as what's going to happen, the destruction of mankind, when it is still clear that mankind does it to himself, and it just so happens to be that the apes survive. They're like, we have to kill them, because if we kill them now, then that future won't happen. And I would have been the guy in the back going, maybe get rid of the bombs?
Yeah.
Maybe I saw Superman 4. Maybe don't kill the monkeys. They're nice monkeys.
And maybe don't watch any of the Terminator sequels past the second one. Because it doesn't work anyway.
This is, like you say, it's fun science fiction with enough of a thought behind it to where you can accept it on all levels. I have a harder time with Conquest mainly because it's only 20 years after this. In other words, Cornelius and Zira have the sad end, and then Roddy McDowall comes back as their kid Caesar, who is hiding out with Mr. Rourke on Fantasy Island.
Now listen to me, Caesar. There can be only one talking chimpanzee on Earth. The child of the two talking apes, Cornelius and Zira, who came to us years ago out of the future and were brutally murdered for fear that one very distant day, apes might dominate the human race.
That was the thing about Escape that I loved. It's like, I'm loving this movie already, and now we've got Ricardo Montalban.
I know.
Yeah, this is even getting better.
I know. It is the thing where it's like, oh my God, that's cake on top of cake.
Let me get this straight. You are asking me to risk imprisonment for the sake of two fugitive apes? Well, the answer is 1,000 times yes.
Because it's like, I love all animals. I will take wonderful care of you and your baby. Smiles, everyone. Smiles.
And he's so into that role. He really digs into that role.
He's one of those actors that John and I like to talk about where they never phoned it in. Like a Vincent Price. It doesn't matter the level of thing they're in. They could be in total schlock. Ricardo Montalban is in an episode of Columbo, and he's giving it as much intensity and delightfulness as he does these movies, as he does, Star Trek.
I don't appreciate this little war of nerves you are conducting, Columbo. I am Luis Montoya, and you are in my country.
He could not phone it in. God bless that man. But yeah, he's awesome as the circus owner. But the whole thing is that only 20 years or so have passed, and we're led to believe that somehow our versions of gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees have physically mutated. And they drop one line where it's something like, well, how are they learning at all? Especially this quickly. It's only been like 20 years since Cornelius and Zira showed up. And they're like...
Then when people realized how quick they were to learn, how easy to train, the pets became larger and larger until now...
And you're like, yeah... Maybe they shouldn't have done it 20 years later. Maybe it should have been like 3 centuries later, because we're still safely within the time period that humanity destroys itself. But it's so suddenly, instead of bad gorilla suits, we now have just the head makeup, and they're walking like that. And I'm like, no, you're still a guy. Sorry, buddy, you're still a guy.
We shall not sit in council with humans.
One of the nice touches in Dawn, and I noted this when I was rewatching Dawn after seeing Battle, that Koba is very much modeled after General Aldo from Battle. It's a very similar but better written story.
Human work.
A better written character, too.
Yeah, but I will say not as well acted as a Claude Akins.
Oh, God.
Because
The schoolroom is closed. Now we go back to riding horses. Aldo!
We do not deny the possibility of man's decline and fall. All we want to find out is how apes rose.
One of the other really loving tributes, and this harkens back to the retconning you're talking about that happens in Escape. That great scene where Cornelius recites the history of ape kind.
They learned to refuse.
That story that he tells, where it's like the first word spoken by an ape is no, which of course they do pay direct tribute to in Rise.
Yes.
And it's one of the best moments in the whole film.
He said no.
Oh.
And the story that Cornelius tells, that ape who speaks the first word is named Aldo, not Caesar.
Yes.
So that was the lore that was passed down to them. And so it suggested, I heard somebody mention this in one of the extras I watched or something, that essentially what happens in Escape through Conquest and Battle is it's the timeline has been changed because they went back in time.
So that's how it all started.
So it's just such a nice touch, the fact that they went back to that story for the reboots and basically took the trappings of that story. It's so nice.
Here's what's really sad. When you get to Battle, which has a decent idea, it has a decent concept, and that's the last of the original series. Decent concept, but the budget is so dropped off. It looks like it's shot on the back lot. It's just each movie gets progressively cheaper, which is a shame because the stories remain pretty good, but it's like we just don't have the budget. So yeah, you get to the end and it's like, oh, they're just going to fight in a tree. Okay.
Yeah.
Would you recommend people today go back and revisit the original films?
Yes, the first one, definitely. The second one, if you're feeling adventurous. Escape from Planet of the Apes, definitely go and watch that. The second film is an oddity, and it's definitely worth watching if you get into it, but it's not a good movie.
Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
It was John Landis who actually worked on these films. He describes Beneath the Planet of the Apes as trash, but it's fun trash.
This movie's kind of fun. It's just real trash.
I agree. It is so batshit that I kind of love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would echo your recommendations. The first one, you've got to see. Even if you know the twist, which we've already talked about, everyone knows the twist. There are babies being born right now that already know the twist of the original Planet of the Apes. But Escape and Conquest back to back, you have to forgive them their weaknesses, specifically budget.
Yeah.
And the fact that Conquest is essentially one set and it's all an outdoor, college. That's basically, it's like future Los Angeles is this block. Okay.
Yeah.
Regardless of that, they're both thought-provoking. And that last one, if you're just a completist, why not?
Well, the last one I think is notable mostly for Roddy Taylor's...
Roddy
McDowell's Taylor. God. His performance in the movie is so great. But also its connections to Dawn, which we talked about already. Dawn takes that story basically and just lifts it up and makes it so much better. Mm-hmm. But it's so true and faithful to it is at the same time. So yeah, you'll appreciate it more, I think, if you've seen Dawn first.
Actually, yeah, that's actually not a bad way to do it. And of course the reboots, and I'm saying this without having seen War, but they're amazing. They're so well done. It is perhaps the best reboot series ever. Anyway, thanks for aping out with us or monkeying around with us. Ha ha ha! Dad joke.
Please do not use the word monkey.
But anyway, Chad, it's been a pleasure. Bye, peace apps. Oh shit, are we recording?
Yes.